Did you witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes. You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption
Excuse me,
statutes.
sir. Excuse me,
Ara.
sir. Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime.
You're a serious business person, Mr. Bobulinski, right?
I am.
Unlike the convicted felon next to you.
The end of July, when the Biden family put them right front and center in the middle of a $9 billion transaction between the Russian state-owned energy company Rosneft and CFC, a surrogate for the Chinese Communist Party.
Did Hunter Biden call Joe Biden with Elaine Baturina on the line on May 4th, 2014, yes or no?
Yes.
From one of these phone calls, did Hunter Biden tell Joe Biden that he and Henry Zhao needed help getting, quote, getting across the finish line?
Yes, that's correct.
Good luck to the left proving otherwise.
As I said here today, I have zero doubt that Russia is involved. This is a Russian campaign to interfere in our elections.
Should I allow Hunter to give his opening statement first?
Doesn't appear Mr. Biden showed up for his public hearing, so we'll recognize you, Mr. Bobulinski.
The short version or a long version?
Long version, but within a minute.
Okay.
Is
They
for
don't want to hear the
Mr.
truth. You can't handle the
Galan-
truth, Matt Gates.
Look, well, the truth for you is taking money from Russians to buy marijuana businesses and then going to jail and then coming here to lie about Trump.
Mr. Bobulinski, who's the big guy? Joe Biden. You're sure? I'm 1,000% sure.
Now recognize Mr. Bobulinski for his opening statement.
Should I allow Hunter to give his opening statement first?
Doesn't appear Mr. Biden showed up for his public hearing, so we'll recognize you, Mr. Bobulinski.
Mr. Bobulinski, I heard your opening statement. It's submitted to the record, part of our proceedings. I have a quick question. Simple. Is it your testimony today that you personally witnessed President Joe Biden commit a crime?
I believe the fact that he was sitting with me while I was putting together a business
Did you
deal,
witness the
but
president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime. Did you watch him steal something?
Corruption statutes, RICO and conspiracy.
What is it?
FARA.
What is the crime, sir?
You
Specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption
Excuse me,
statutes,
sir. Excuse me,
FARA.
sir. Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category. What is the
It's a category of crimes that you're then charged
You
under
have charges.
a long 100
You
list
have
of
charges.
statutes.
Sir,
You
please
want me to name the exact statute
Sir,
under RICO?
yes.
Well, it's funny. In this committee room, everyone's not here. There's over 18
All right, sir. I reclaim my time.
lawyers that
I
went to
reclaim
law
my
school.
time. I
I'll leave
reclaim
it
my
up to
time.
you guys
Okay,
to
thank
define
you,
the
sir. I
statute
reclaim my
under
time.
RICO.
Clearly, what we are seeing here today is a continuation of the 15-month saga of the Republican majority lost in the desert. Impeachment 101. The majority party, or whomever is raising impeachment, must accuse the president of a high crime, a specific high crime or misdemeanor. I would like to submit to the record HRES 918, the House resolution to open this impeachment inquiry.
Without objection to order.
This resolution does not outline a high crime or misdemeanor. It's not here.
You're a serious business person, Mr. Bobulinski, right?
I am.
Unlike the convicted felon next to you, you've served in the military, right?
Correct.
You've done big deals,
Correct.
complicated deals, deals that involved foreign businesses, right?
Correct.
And so what I'm trying to figure out is when you came to realize that you showed up at the wrong party. Because you kind of strike me as a guy who showed up to do a legitimate business deal, and you ended up instead at a bribe. And so as you're looking at CEFC, as you're having this meeting with Joe Biden, as Hunter Biden is introducing you to his web of contacts, when did you go from serious businessman Tony Bobulinski working to make a buck in a capitalist system to a guy worried that you had been unwittingly ensnared into Hunter and Joe Biden's bribe operation with the Chinese Communist Party?
I appreciate the question. It wasn't an aha moment. It was more of a process. I am a serious businessman, demonstrated by the different deals I've done around the world and the success of them. But it started, remember, the Biden family wasn't my entry into this. James Gillier, who I'd known for over 10 years, who traveled the world doing business, kept trying to get me involved. I really had no interest. I sat down in the spring of 2017 to walk through things, and then I quickly put together two businesses, Sinohawk and Oneida. After the meetings in Los Angeles with Hunter and Joe Biden, it started to sort of, bells and whistles started to go off when Jim Biden used the term plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability is the first moment, straight from the lips of Jim Biden, right on the heels of your discussion with Joe Biden, where you start to think, this might not be legit.
Correct. And my lawyers at the time could attest to that because I reached out to them saying, listen, I'm a former naval officer. I held a Q security clearance. I couldn't collect. Somebody couldn't take me to dinner for $50. This just does not make sense to me.
But you proceed, and then later this thing starts to get a lot uglier. What's the moment you go from, okay, your spidey senses are up, you're analyzing this, to now you know this is a crime that you are bearing witness to?
The end of July, when the Biden family put them right front and center in the middle of a $9 billion transaction between the Russian state-owned energy company Rosneft and CFC, a surrogate for the Chinese Communist Party.
And was there ever a time in the deals you were involved in where you started to see the money move around the legitimate business enterprise and toward the pockets of the Bidens?
Well, the challenge, Mr. Gates, with that is at the time they moved the money, right? You guys have the text messages where Hunter Biden shook down Director Zhang, but I was not aware of that. I spent a year asking questions of, this doesn't make sense to me, where's the money? I stepped in and had lawyers work to dissolve the two entities. I didn't know till years later that they had defrauded me, they had gotten paid all this money, and all this craziness. The amount of facts,
it just seems pretty simple. This is either a bribe or a business.
It was a bribe from the Chinese Communist Party.
And
I don't say that lightly. There's 1,200 pages, 8 days of testimony in the Southern District of New York. I encourage everyone watching me, hearing me say this. They're publicly available. Go read them. Our Department of Justice outlines in intimate detail the corruption and bribes that CFC was deploying to political officials all over the world.
It wasn't
so
just in
I'm
the
here
United
to
States.
believe that they did this in every other country, but with the Biden family, it was pristine. It was an actual clean business. That's absurd.
And you came to know that, and that's when you blew the whistle, right? That's when you started to get worried, when you saw Joe Biden.
I stepped away from it. There's the whistleblowers. I can't give them kudos enough for the bravery and the risk they put their family in. They publish stuff where I am voicing the concern of the Rosneft deal.
And you animated your concerns when you saw that this wasn't just a corrupt bribe, a corrupt business deal happening to a guy who used to be vice president. When you see that everyone's made a big deal like you're a bad guy, that you showed up at the debate, or you're trying to give life to these facts that you've observed, that it's so bad that you did that during a political contest. But observing this, it kind of seems like it would be unpatriotic for you to stay quiet.
Of course.
And so, I mean, Joe Biden running for president clearly motivated the Chinese to consummate this bribe. Did it also motivate you?
Well, I didn't want to go public. I wanted to simply unload all the facts, personal experiences. It's funny, there's 18 people on this committee with law degrees, including, I think, Mr. Swalwell. Evidence, firsthand testimony, is the most powerful evidence you have. I've given it, Mr. Galanis has given it, along with a whole host of other witnesses. Then, on top of that, I have thousands of documents and pages of legals and stuff like that.
That's what's
I
interesting,
wanted to
Mr.
simply
Bobulinski.
give this information.
Yeah,
Congressmen and senators.
No
and
one
let them
questioned
do their
any of
job.
your facts. Yeah. No one brought a single piece of evidence that even for a moment discredited any of the truthful testimony that you've given us.
No, they
my
did
time's
not.
expired. I yield back.
Today, we have Mr. Bobulinski, whose biggest contribution is that he had, quote, multiple meetings with Joe Biden. But let's be clear. He spoke with Joe Biden a grand total of 2 times in the span of less than 24 hours in 2017, and each was short. One in public in the bar of a hotel, and then for a few minutes backstage of the Milken conference after Biden spoke about the efforts to fight cancer, which took the life of his son, Beau. I think we also need to clarify that while Mr. Bobulinski is all of a sudden today claiming that they talked business, but at no point did he mention this during his deposition under oath with this committee. At two different points, when asked about what was said in these conversations, Mr. Bobulinski's account made clear that he had zero substantive business discussions with Mr. Joe Biden. Mr. Bobulinski described those conversations twice during his transcribed interview, and both times he provided the same account. I'll read from the transcript of your interview, Mr. Bobulinski. You stated that you and Joe Biden discussed your, quote, family background in detail, as well as the Biden family's background and Joe Biden's, quote, appreciation for the military. Pages 48 through 52 and 268 to 271 of the transcript had these accounts. Based on your own account, you had zero discussion of CEFC, the Chinese energy company. You had zero discussion on shares of equity or capitalization of this failed business venture. Based on your own account, you simply exchanged pleasantries about your families and shared values, the kind of small talk any person would make if they had the opportunity to meet the former vice president of the United States, and moved on.
On March 1st, 2024, Joe Biden stated he did not interact with Hunter or Jim Biden business associates. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into a record New York Post article. Biden insists he did not interact with his family.
Without objection to order.
We're going to go fast here. I have strictly yes or no questions. On that note, the New York Post article, Joe Biden also said, read the record of every single witness. So I did. I first read Devin Archer's deposition, and he interacted with Joe Biden. Then I read the transcripts of Wab Walker, Eric Schwerin, George Burgess, Kevin Morris, Tony Bobulinski, and Jason Galanis. And every single one of them interacted with Joe Biden. And that's just the people we interviewed. Mr. Galanis, my first questions are for you. Did Hunter Biden call Joe Biden with Elena Badarina on the line on May 4th, 2014, yes or no?
Yes.
In that call, did Hunter Biden state on this call with Joe Biden that everything is good and we're moving forward?
Yes, he did.
Okay, on the same call, did Joe Biden in the call was saying, okay, then you be good to my boy?
Yes, he said that as well.
Okay, did Badarina agree to put $20 million into one of Hunter Biden's business projects days later after this phone call?
Yes.
Okay, did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
Yes, he did.
During this call, did Hunter Biden update Joe Biden on progress in landing a business partnership with Harvest Fund Management?
Yes.
Okay. Was Harvest a $300 billion Chinese financial services company closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Is Hunter Biden involved with Harvest?
Hunter Biden is involved in Harvest in two ways, through BHR, which is the fund.
Yes or no? Was Hunter
Biden
Biden involved with Harvest? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the
Extensive emails to that effect.
As part of the deal, did Hunter Biden want the company to reserve a board seat for Joe Biden?
Yes.
Okay. Did Henry Zhao, a Chinese businessman, want assurances Joe Biden would join the board? Yes or no?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
He's expressed that in emails as well.
Okay, thank you.
And
Did Hunter Biden draft an email stating, please also remind Henry Zhao of our conversation about a board seat for a certain relation of mine. Devin and I golfed with that relation earlier this week, and we discussed this very idea again. And as always, he remains very, very keen on the opportunity. Here is a photo of Joe Biden and Devin Archer and Hunter Biden golfing days before the alleged email draft. Do you believe a certain relation of mine refers to Joe Biden?
I don't think there's any question. It was based on first-hand conversations with Devin Archer, who was in that picture and at that golf meeting.
Did you ever meet with Devin Archer where Hunter took calls from his father?
Yes.
Okay. During one of these phone calls, did Hunter Biden tell Joe Biden that he and Henry Zhao needed help getting, quote, getting across the finish line?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Bobulinski, do you recall receiving an email that floated the possibility of giving 10% ownership of Sinohawk to Joe Biden through Hunter Biden?
Yes.
Okay, my last questions are for both of you very quickly. Mr. Bobulinski and Mr. Galanis, you both stated you were told not to use Joe Biden's name in communications, correct, Mr. Bobulinski?
Correct.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
Okay. Did Joe Biden participate in phone conversations and meetings with Hunter Biden, his business associates, and foreign interests, yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
He clearly did. He met
Okay,
me
Mr.
twice.
Galanis, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. In Hunter Biden's deposition, he said he did not involve his father in his business. Did Hunter Biden lie under oath, yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
If that's what he said, yes, that would be true.
Is Joe Biden lying when he says he did not interact with Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, their business partners or forward interests? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
All right. In a debate on October 22nd, 2020, Joe Biden denied Hunter Biden made money from China. Then Hunter Biden and his business associates and foreign interests include money from Chinese businesses, business partners, and or interests. Yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
I'm sorry, did the
Did
Biden
Hunter Biden
family
receive
make
money
money?
from Chinese
Correct,
business
yes.
interests? Mr. Galanis? Did Hunter Biden
Money
receive
from-
money from Chinese business interests? Yes or no?
Yes, he was,
Okay, thank
yes, he had economic interest, and yes.
All right. Joe
Yes,
Biden
we
has
promise.
repeatedly claimed that he was not involved in Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, or any other Biden family business deals. Today, our witnesses have proved otherwise. Today, we've established Joe Biden lied about interacting with Hunter Biden's business associates. It is my belief Joe Biden is the closer for Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and their business associates and foreign interests. Good luck to the left proving otherwise.
Former President Trump and Rudy Giuliani flew you to Ukraine to look for corruption on the part of President Biden. Did you find any?
No.
And following your Ukraine trip, Senate Republicans, Senator Grassley and Johnson, released their Burisma report, which the New York Times concluded was, quote, unproven allegations that echo an active Russian disinformation campaign, end quote. Mr. Parnas, are the unproven allegations that are at the heart of the Republican report the same fabricated claims that Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani sent you to Ukraine to go dig up?
Yes.
Last summer, you wrote a letter to Congress noting that when the media started to get tired of the smoke screens and using this, one of the authors of the Republican Burisma report would be your, quote, guy in the Senate to push all the information, end quote. What did you mean by that?
Senator Ron Johnson was our guy in the Senate. It was told to me that when we push the information, he's going to push it in the halls of Congress.
So when the media was getting skeptical about pushing disinformation after they've proven it wrong time and time again, the plan was to have a U.S. Senator, Ron Johnson, to push that disinformation even further.
Correct, because we had Congressman Nunes already doing it, so Senator Ron Johnson jumped on board.
This Congress, both Chairman Comer and Chairman Jordan, have centered this entire sham impeachment hearing on an FBI tip sheet. This tip sheet made wild claims about bribery that didn't even come close to being backed up. And in fact, it's all being proved to be one big lie. Mr. Parnas, is the allegation in the FBI tip sheet based on the same fabricated claims that Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani flew you to Ukraine to dig up?
Yes.
I also want to make it clear that the informant allegedly behind this tip sheet is facing criminal charges for lying about the Biden family and was a known fraud for years before that. The same fabricated claim kept popping up and getting smacked down over and over again. In fact, our colleagues at the Foreign Affairs Committee did some amazing work on this investigation and found that this lie dates back to December 2015, almost 10 years ago. Do you happen to know the article that I'm referring to?
I don't know the exact article, but I do know that the slide has started way back in 2015.
Started about 10 years ago. It was an article entitled, quote, The Ukrainian Scam of the Biden Family, end quote. And it was posted to a Russian language media website registered in a city in Russian-occupied Crimea. Mr. Parnas, do you have any doubt that this fabrication claim, the claim that Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani sent you to Ukraine to try to dig up more information on, is part of Russian propaganda and an effort to destabilize Ukraine and undermine our democracy?
As I said here today, I have zero doubt that Russia's involved. This is a Russian campaign to interfere in our elections.
I want to talk about CEFC, which is the China Energy Fund Committee. Mr. Bobulinski, who is Chairman Yi?
Chairman Yi was the chairman of CEFC.
Thank you. Jim Biden told the FBI and IRS that Chairman Yi was the protege of Xi Jinping, the leader of China and the Chinese Communist Party. Mr. Bobulinski, Rob Walker told this committee that Joe Biden met Chairman Yi. Are you aware of that? Yes or no?
I am now. I wasn't at the time.
And Joe Biden also met with you, is that right?
Yes, he did. Twice.
Who is Director Zhang?
Director Zhang was the number 2 at CFC.
The executive director of CEFC, the number 2?
Yeah, he was the number 2 executive, but really the point person that I worked with and the Biden family worked with, and he's the individual that Hunter Biden was shaking down at the end of July 2017, demanding that they fund the $10 million. They ultimately sent 5, but $10 million directly to Hunter Biden's account, Owasco.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. I want to show you a text message that Hunter Biden sent to you and his other business associates. I'm holding it right here. I'll read it to you. Hey, Tony, I have an idea. In light of the fact we are at an impasse of sorts, and both James' lawyers and my chairman gave an emphatic no, I think we should all meet in Romania. He's speaking about my chairman. When Hunter Biden came in for his deposition, he said that he was referring to Chairman Yi, and that the rest of your group referred to Zhang as a different chairman. Does this make any sense to you?
That's a lie. I never heard Director Zhang referenced as chairman, and I had direct communications with Director Zhang over WeChat, met him in Romania, met him in Moscow, met him around the world in New York, trying to develop this business, and he was never referred to as the chairman, first of all. Second of all, that makes absolutely no sense in the context of this message because we are discussing Oneida Holdings, LLC.
Thank you. So he was not the chairman, just to clarify. Yes,
correct.
Or no? Okay. So I want to show you another text. When he said his chairman, he was talking about his dad. This is from Rob Walker. It didn't seem to make much sense to Rob Walker either. So he said that when Hunter, he said this to you, when Hunter was talking about his chairman, he was talking about his dad. When Rob Walker came in to give his transcribed interview to the committee, he basically said, well, Hunter was high or confused or mad. And Rob Walker said that he was just trying to calm things down between you and Hunter. But that doesn't really answer the question about who Hunter Biden is talking about. Hunter Biden lied to this committee. So here, clearly, he says, Rob Walker's saying he's talking about his dad. So I want to be very clear. We've established that Zhang is not the chairman, obviously. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Correct.
Let me show you another message. This message doesn't call Zhang Chairman Zhang, does it? It just says the Chinese want to do business with the Bidens. As a matter of fact, it says, both coming to be my partner, to be partners with the Bidens, with an S. He, Zhang, is implied, has implied that the number 1 has made it clear and available to him. Who is the number 1?
The number 1 is Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping, the president of China? Yes or no? The leader of the Communist Party, the CCP?
Yes.
Is the number 1?
Yes, that's the number 1 that Hunter was referencing in that message.
Now, let's be very clear. This was in 2017, but I would like to make it known for this committee that Joe Biden told the press in 2016, as a matter of fact, I quote, yeah, I am going to run in 2020. He told the press in 2016 that he was running for president of the United States in 2020. So here is the Bidens doing business in China in 2017 when everybody knew he was planning to be president of the United States. Do you see that to be a serious problem, Mr. Bobulinski?
I do, and I wish this committee would thoroughly investigate it and focus on all the evidence that the SDNY has on CFC. They had FISA warrants, so they were recording conversations, and I wish they disclosed all that data and fact to this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski.
With any luck, today marks the end of perhaps the most spectacular failure in the history of congressional investigations, the effort to find a high crime or misdemeanor committed by Joe Biden and then to impeach him for it. In prior hilarious episodes of this long-running Madcap series, America got to see the following. 1, nearly 20 fact witnesses who could not identify a single act of wrongdoing by President Biden, much less a high crime and misdemeanor, and who overwhelmingly testified that Biden was not involved in any of his family's business adventures. 2, 3 expert witnesses called by the majority itself who said nothing that they had seen in the tens of thousands of pages of documents adduced by the majority even remotely approach the level of a high crime and misdemeanor. Bank records would show exactly what all the witnesses told us, that Joe Biden was not involved in his family members' businesses. Repeated voyeuristic displays of pornographic images by the majority, completely irrelevant to any conceivable legislative or investigative purpose. A star witness, Gal Luft, who turned out to be a Chinese agent and an illegal arms trafficker on the run from American justice, and the key piece of evidence which launched the entire zany goose chase, an FD 1023 form in which the FBI duly recorded a completely fictional tip about a $5 million bribe to Vice President Biden, peddled by Alex Smirnoff, who has been criminally indicted by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, Special Counsel David Weiss, for felony counts of systematically lying to the FBI and constructing a false record about Joe Biden, and now sits in jail in California as a flight risk while the world studies his long-standing and extensive ties to Russian intelligence.
Mr. Galanis, are you aware of any times Hunter Biden used Joe Biden with Joe Biden's knowledge to benefit their business associates?
Yes.
Which business associates?
Yelena Baturina, Russian oligarch, testified about Russian, Chinese, Chinese fund manager, Henry Zhao, and Nikolai Zlochevsky, a Ukrainian oligarch, oil and gas oligarch.
Okay. Now that we've established that Joe Biden was involved in his family's business dealings, I'd like to turn to the financial records we've subpoenaed. One major point my Democrat colleagues downplay is how much money the Bidens accumulated from foreign business ventures in such a short period of time. We have over $24 million to the Biden family and their business associates from 2014, while Joe Biden was vice president, to 2019. Mr. Bobulinski, there came a time when you were attempting to raise $10 million from the Chinese to pursue an actual business deal, a real business deal. But it wouldn't be correct to say this was a $10 million deal, would it? What did the Bidens conceive of the business with the Chinese becoming?
The Chinese were committing to deploying billions of dollars in infrastructure projects here in the United States as well as around the world.
Mr. Galanis, what was the financial goal you, Mr. Archer, and Hunter Biden set out to achieve? Was it millions of dollars or billions of dollars?
Billions of dollars.
Billions
Chairman.
with a B.
Yes, billions.
Now I'd like to turn to some of the statements Joe Biden has made during his presidency about the findings of this investigation. Mr. Bobulinski, Joe Biden has said he never interacted with his family's business associates. Did he meet with you?
He did.
In fact, are you aware that Joe Biden also met with...
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. He did
yes, go ahead.
multiple times.
Okay. Are you aware that Joe Biden also met with Rob Walker, Eric Sherwin, and Devin Archer, too?
I'm generally aware of it.
Mr. Galanis, as you discussed earlier regarding Yelena Baturina, the Russian oligarch, you were present for Hunter Biden calling his then Vice President father with the Russian oligarch, Yelena Baturina. Present, correct?
That's correct.
You also were present for Hunter Biden's conversation with his father about a board seat on a Chinese company board. Is that correct?
I was present for a call when Chinese transactions discussed, yes.
So, Mr. Galanis, isn't it true that when Joe Biden said he didn't interact with his family's business associates, that's not true, is it?
I believe it would be misleading to the point of being an untruth.
I want to touch on the fact about the absent seat in the middle. Hunter Biden has chosen not to attend today's proceedings. I've given Mr. Biden exactly what he asked for before his deposition. It's clear that Hunter Biden knows his testimony would not withstand public scrutiny. Joe Biden has not been truthful about his participation in schemes to sell access and influence. And today's witnesses will show the American people a side of the story that the president and his allies on this side of the aisle are eager to hide. Mr. Bobulinski, Can you tell us about your meeting at the Beverly Hilton with Joe Biden?
The short version or a long version?
Long version, but within a minute.
Okay. So Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and Joe Biden were in Los Angeles for a variety of business discussions. Joe was there to speak at the Milken Conference in May of 2017. I had lunch with Hunter Biden at the Chateau Marmont, and he had asked me to meet with his father that night. He set up a meeting at the Beverly Hilton where they hold the Milken Conference, and I got there a bit early and sat with Jim Biden, Hunter Biden, and we're just talking about what we were doing with the Chinese and the legal documents I was working through. And they had sort of coached me before Joe showed up to, listen, we're going to just keep things at a very high level. We're not going to go into a lot of details in this meeting. And I just remember that discussion generally because it just struck me as odd, honestly. Joe wasn't in the White House then, and that they were sort of framing it that way. And then Joe showed up, walked through the lobby of the Beverly Hilton Hotel. I stood up to shake his hand, and we sat down and spent 45 minutes to an hour going through my background.
You met with him that long?
Yes. This wasn't a handshake, a 2-second discussion about the weather. This was a 45-minute long meeting to an hour where we talked about a lot of stuff.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Parnas, how much time did you spend in prison? 4 months.
4 months.
But you were indicted for crimes that could have resulted in you spending 50 years in prison, right?
Right, they were false crimes. The judge saw through it.
Well, you went to trial and you were convicted, right?
I went to trial, correct.
And the crime was that you were trying to acquire marijuana licenses, and you took money from a Russian oligarch, and you tried to use that money to go give political donations and do what you had to do to acquire marijuana licenses. Is that about right?
That's what the crime was. That's what the indictment was. Yeah.
Right, so it sounds like everyone here today, the only one working for a Russian oligarch was you. Right? I mean,
yeah, it was.
I just heard you wax.
It's public information.
Yeah, no, I just heard you wax poetic.
I got paid $200,000. You know how much I got paid.
You were really worried about our democracy, and you were here to warn us. But you were working for a Russian oligarch,
on behalf
wanting to
of
get
President
marijuana
Trump.
licenses. But then you didn't even do it. The fraud you committed against the Russian oligarch was that instead you spent the money on yourself. So, like, was that what you were doing to fight against Russia's aggression?
That's a lie.
Just taking their money? Well, that's what you were convicted of.
No,
but instead of spending 50 years in prison, you got 4 months. As this hearing continues, I look forward to hearing what Mr. Galanis thinks about how he was treated by the DOJ for telling the truth, as opposed to how you're treated for lying.
The DOJ didn't listen to the truth, because if they would listen to the truth,
the question Mr. Gates had is for Mr.
Hear the truth. You can't handle the truth, Matt Gates.
Look, well, the truth for you is taking money from Russians to buy marijuana businesses and then go into jail and then coming here to lie about Trump.
You should know better than anybody.
Gentlemen's time has expired. Chair now.
You should know better than anybody.
Gentlemen's time's expired.
So I want to keep going. So you also call yourself, you're not a political person, yet you went to a presidential debate on behalf of Donald Trump. I also want to make it clear that you made numerous claims and allegations. You've made them today, you've made them before. And yet, even though you're not a political person, this is also another photo of you, you actually chose to show up at a press conference for Donald Trump prior to the debate because you're not a political person. Did you show up to a press conference for Donald Trump before the debate?
I can't qualify whether it was for Donald Trump.
Do you know who invited you? Sir, who invited you to the debate? Donald Trump, you said. Who invited you to the press conference?
Who invited me to my lawyers coordinated things, and I showed up at a.
Well, sir, I will tell you, it was Jason Miller, who it's been very clear, it's been reported, who actually worked on the part of the Donald Trump campaign. Here you are at a Donald Trump press conference, and you can't remember how you got to the press conference. You refuse to answer how you actually got into the Donald Trump debate with Joe Biden. Do you remember speaking at the press conference?
I do, very clearly.
You do. Do you know who Jason Miller is, sir?
I do know of him, yes.
Do you know that he was a Trump campaign staffer?
Mr. Garcia, you keep asking me semantical questions. You underestimate that I had 3 lawyers around me that were coordinating my travel, where I was going, and stuff
well, sir,
like that.
interesting.
So please stop.
Well, I'll reclaim my time. Thank you very much. It's interesting, sir, because you show up to a pre-debate press conference. You show up to a presidential debate, both invited to by a person running for the presidency of the United States. You know the stakes are high, yet you have no idea how you got to the press conference. You don't remember how you got to the debate. And here you are speaking at a press conference of which the national media, so how did you get to this press conference?
I flew on a plane.
Who invited you?
Are we going in circles?
Sir, who invited you to the press conference?
My lawyers told me I was invited to come to Tennessee. At that point, I was trying to get the truth and the facts out to the American people. At that moment in time, if I recall, I believe 80 million people watched that debate. And that was probably the number one.
Thank you, sir. I reclaim my time. Well, with that, I think it's very clear for someone that can't remember how I got to a Donald Trump press conference or a Donald Trump debate, you're completely an uncredible witness, sir. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Bobulinski, who's the big guy? Are you sure about that? Because when Joe Biden, you're sure? I'm 1,000% sure. Because when Hunter Biden did his deposition under oath, he said, I don't know who it is, even though he was copied on an email that said H will hold 10% for the big guy. You sure it's the big guy is Joe Biden? 1,000%. And there's other text messages that back that up, that the brave whistleblowers, Shapley and Ziegler, have produced, not from my phones, not from my BlackBerry that I took screenshots from. They took them from subpoenas directly from Apple's iCloud that back up the fact that Hunter knew the big guy was Joe Biden. The big guy is the brand. The big guy is the lift. The big guy is the one who showed up at golf outings, who took phone calls and meetings and lunches and dinners with Hunter Biden and his business associates. Is that right? Correct. Mr. Galanis, you referenced in your opening statement, May 4th, 2014, you were at a party at a restaurant in Brooklyn, New York. Can you tell me who else was there?
Yeah, it was a birthday party, so there were more than 100 people there, but amongst them was Devin Archer, myself, the host, Alex Kuklarski, Yelena Baterna, her husband, and then Hunter Biden joined. And
tell us, I think you referenced a phone call that took place. Tell the committee what happened with that phone call. Who was involved in that phone call?
As I testified in my opening statement, it was Yelena Baterina, her husband, myself, Hunter initiating it, Joe Biden on the speakerphone, and Devin Archer.
So there was a little pull aside where that group of people you just described were pulled aside, and Hunter Biden called his fathers or called the vice president. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And then tell me what was discussed on the call.
The discussion I testified it was a relatively short discussion, but it was a discussion about Yelena and Yuri coming to town. As I testified specifically, they talked about being good to his boy, and it was ended.
Well, let me ask you this.
Mentioning that,
Mr. Galanis, let me ask you this. Did you get the impression Joe Biden was expecting the call?
Yes, to me it was clearly set up ahead of time. It was an arranged call.
So this was arranged, this was coordinated. Hunter Biden calls his father, then vice president, and I think in your deposition he said this, I'm here with our friends that I told you were coming to town. So it's our friends, and I told you this was going to happen, which suggests that it was most definitely coordinated. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, yes.
And again, can you tell the committee who Miss Baterina is again?
A Russian billionaire, wife of the former mayor of Moscow, served for near 20 years as the mayor.
She's the wealthiest woman in Russia. She'd already given money.
Right.
She'd already given money to Hunter Biden and his business before this meeting in May, and then subsequent to that meeting, she committed to give more money. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
So subsequent to the coordinated call, the arranged call that Hunter Biden had with the Vice President of the United States, the wealthiest woman in Russia commits to give millions of dollars more to Hunter Biden's business. Is that all accurate, Mr. Galanis?
That is accurate, yes.
And again, this was a pull aside done at this meeting, and you think and you know that it was coordinated. Is this what they call access to the brand, access to the Biden lift? Is that what you would describe it as, Mr. Galanis?
I don't think there's any doubt that was the intent of the call and the objective, yes.
And it followed the motto. It followed the statement that you all agreed to, say it, forget it, write it, regret it. This wasn't put in writing. This was a phone call on a speaker that was all, there's no writing about this. It was all done that way. That was how the business operated. Is that correct, Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
You observed back in 2023 in a letter you sent to Chairman Comer that there were flagrant examples of Giuliani interfering in Ukrainian politics, unquote. Why would Giuliani be interfering in another country's politics?
I mean, Giuliani would do and say whatever he needed for the purpose of getting the information he wanted to secure Donald Trump 2020 election. So just a prime example of one of the things he did, he had a close relationship with then a boxer, Vladimir Klitschko, who was then the mayor in Ukraine. When the new president came over, there was rumors about maybe him not staying in office as mayor of Ukraine. Klitschko flew to New York, met with Rudy Giuliani, and then on a meeting that we had with Andrei Yermak in Spain that was relevant, had to do with President Zelensky announcing an investigation into Joe and Hunter Biden. At that meeting, he also brought up the Klitschko situation and basically told Yermak that if Zelensky got rid of Klitschko, President Trump and the American people would be very upset about that because we love him and he needs to be in there.
So was Giuliani just doing this as a rogue on his own because he was a patriotic American who loved Donald Trump, or had somebody encouraged him to engage in this kind of political interference in another country?
I mean, I think he was encouraged by Donald Trump.
Personally?
Personally, yes.
That's your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In your letter, you also said that Mr. Giuliani was to, quote, deliver a precise message in very strict words, unquote, with respect to the administration of the then newly installed president of Ukraine, President Zelensky. What did you understand a very strict message, or a message of very strict words, construed, and what was that message that you delivered that was in very strict words?
Yes, Congressman. He basically told me not to be nice, to be very stern, and relay the message that unless Zelensky announced an investigation into the Bidens by Monday, this was Sunday, that there would be no cooperation, no aid to Ukraine from the United States, and the Vice President Pence at the time that was scheduled to appear for the inauguration would not appear to the inauguration.
That would seem to corroborate that very famous and beautiful telephone conversation between President Trump then and President Zelensky, basically saying, but I need a favor, and hinting that there'd be withholding of military aid until that favor was delivered. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. I was a part of setting up that phone call, that famous phone call that Trump had with Zelensky.
You have met Joe Biden, isn't that correct?
Correct.
In fact, you had a meeting with Joe Biden, isn't that correct?
2 of them.
One of those times was before the Milken Conference in Los Angeles, May of 2017, is that correct?
It was during the Milken Conference.
You provided a great deal of documentation to this committee. I want to show you some messages between you and Hunter Biden, be on the screen here, in May of 2017 before you first had a meeting with Joe Biden. These are messages between you and Hunter Biden dated May 2nd, 2017. Do you recognize these?
I do.
At the bottom, Hunter wrote, "Dad, not in now until 11. Let's me and Jim meet at 10 at Beverly Hilton where he's staying." Jim is James Biden, President Biden's brother. Is that correct?
Correct.
The next set of messages is, if you put those on screen, is between another business associate of Hunter Biden's and you. His name is James. Do you recognize it?
I do.
At the top, you write, "About to meet Hunter, Jim, and I guess Joe at Beverly Hilton Hotel." Joe is now President Joe Biden. Is that correct?
Correct.
This chat between you and Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, you write to Jim, "Great to meet you and spend some time together. Please thank Joe for this time. It was great to talk. Thanks, Tony B." You met with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and Jim Biden the night before the Milken Conference in 2017. Is that correct?
I did, and Jim Biden perjured himself by trying to deny that
Thank
meeting.
you, Mr. Bobulinski. That was at the Beverly Hilton, correct?
Correct.
You can provide more details around that meeting. What was the purpose of that meeting?
I didn't ask for the meeting, so I wish Hunter Biden was sitting next to me and he could under oath describe it. But the only reason why I was meeting with Joe Biden and the only reason why I was there is because I was the CEO of the enterprise that they were putting together with the Chinese company CFC.
So can you give me a little more detail about what was discussed in the meeting?
Well, as I said earlier, before Joe Biden showed up, Hunter and Jim Biden coached me, asked, said a sort of outline that we wouldn't go into a lot of details. So through the 45 to 60-minute meeting I had with Joe Biden, I think it was about 10:40 p.m. after he flew across country, we talked about my background, my family's military background, the different business ventures I'd done around the world, the family I worked with. Joe spent time talking about his family, some of the tragedies that they had lived through. And at a high level, Hunter actually introduced me to Joe because before Joe came and sat down with us, Hunter said, hey, give me 5 to 10 minutes. I need to read my father in on it.
So when you're referencing Joe and Hunter's father, you're referencing President Joe Biden.
I am.
Correct. These 4 images, well, in this message you sent to James again, you said you spent more time with Joe and Jim this morning, and to be factually correct, that's President Joe Biden and James Biden, his brother. Also saw them last night, including Hunter. These 4 images show a pretty clear record of your meeting with Joe Biden in May of 2017, Mr. Bobulinski. Hunter Biden, during his transcribed interview, testified that the meeting did in fact take place. And after being asked, did Mr. Bobulinski meet with your father during the trip, Hunter stated he met with him in the lobby of the hotel. When asked who attended the meeting, Hunter replied, my uncle and myself. But when asked whether the meeting at the Beverly Hilton between Joe Biden, Jim Biden, Hunter Biden, and Tony Bobulinski took place, Jim Biden testified, absolutely not. These stories don't match up.
You testified that Joe Biden was involved in your business venture related to Oneida Holdings and Hunter Biden. So I want to drill down on the crux of what your testimony is. Oneida Holdings is the business venture that you are referring to, correct?
When I'm referring to what? Can you
Any business you did with the Bidens?
My reference is the Sinohawk Holdings LLC, and Oneida Holdings LLC owned 50% of that.
Right. And Oneida Holdings was the 50% that was on the American side of that Sinohawk deal, right?
It was the 50% that was the Biden side of it. Some of the, James Gilliar is not an American, so.
Sorry, fair enough. And it was a joint partnership memorialized in an incorporating document, correct? And it had equal shares divided among 5 partners. Is that right?
Well, I can't.
Well,
are you asking me about what you're holding up? Because you're
sir, was it an equal? Were there equal 20% shares among 5 partners?
In what?
Oneida Holdings.
In the final signed documents?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
It is?
Not complicated.
Well, it is because.
All right, you're just filibustering now. The answer is you're filibustering. I get it. That there were 5 partners: Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, Rob Walker, James Gilliar, and you. Each owned 20%. Do you?
Well, they didn't each own. Their LLCs owned it, which is a material
Do you
difference.
see Joe Biden or an LLC related to Joe Biden on this?
I don't know if Joe Biden owned any of Jim Biden's LLC or Hunter Biden's LLC. I'll leave that up to the committee.
Okay.
Now, so far in this hearing, it has felt like the worst episode of The Apprentice. I'm sure you're familiar with that show. It seems like my colleagues and maybe you and some others are trying to become the next vice president of the United States of America. You're auditioning or something like that, because Mr. Bobulinski, I know that you take exception to the fact that your credibility has been called into question over and over. But when someone comes to testify under oath, whether it's before this committee, behind closed doors, or in person, then we have to evaluate someone's credibility. And sir, I definitely have always had issues with your credibility, as I know that you are very well aware of. So let me remind you of what happened behind closed doors.
Well, you should ask O'Connor about my credibility.
I haven't asked you a question. Okay?
You are?
When I haven't. So when I ask you a question, that's when you answer. Otherwise, I'm talking. So,
excuse me?
With my time, because it's my time, I want to be clear that when we were behind closed doors, you called a number of people liars. You called the Wall Street Journal liars. You called Cassidy Hutchinson a liar. You called the FBI a liar. You called Rob Walker a liar. You called James Gilliar a liar. You called Hunter Biden a liar. You called Jim Biden a liar. And just today, you added to your list, you called my colleague, Congressman Mr. Goldman, a liar as well. It seems like, according to you, the only person that's telling the truth is you, and everyone else is lying. But I want to move on to something else.
Is that a question?
It's not a question.
Okay.
You'll know when I ask you a question, I promise.
Thank you.